My name is Grace, I'm 31 years old, and my life is built according to blueprints where every line is deliberate and every algorithm is predictable. I am a software architect in Austin, and my days are measured not in hours, but in tasks completed. Beyond a stable position, I own a quarter of a thriving startup, a share I didn't receive as a gift, but built, line by line, night after sleepless night. Everything I have is the result of hard work, and I wear this thought like a badge of honor, like a quiet, intimate justification for my own existence. Before we continue, I'm very curious. What country are you from, dear listeners? Write in the comments where you are listening from. And now we continue. But there was another reality, parallel and distorted. My family. Different laws reigned there. There was Dad, Mom, and my younger brother Jake, a 23-year-old youth for whom the world seemed to unfold on its own. We grew up, and for a time, remaining in memory as a blurry spot, everything was fine. Until Jake was born. I was 8 when he appeared, and with his first cry, something broke irrevocably. I didn't just get older. I became invisible. Overnight, I turned into the background, a static decoration on a stage where the center of my parents' universe became this pink, screaming infant. Their love, once blurred and directed at me too, suddenly focused into a single dazzling beam aimed at him. Jake had everything. His wishes were fulfilled even before they could form into a complete thought. He dreamed of soccer camp. He was sent to the most prestigious one. At 16, when he had barely learned the roads of the road, he was handed the keys to a brand new BMW. They rented a spacious apartment for him near the university, although his romance with higher education was short-lived and ended after his first year. He didn't achieve. He simply received. My world was built differently. At 16, I was already standing behind a coffee shop counter, smelling the sweetish aroma of syrup and burnt beans to save up for a used Honda, whose clattering engine became a symbol of independence for me. Stanford opened its doors to me not because of, but in spite of. I entered there, clutching the coveted letter of a full scholarship to my chest because it was too much of a burden for my parents to pay for my education. My student years passed in the rhythm of an endless marathon. Lectures, library, shift, textbooks bought with money from my last paycheck. I never complained. I focused, laser-like, and worked, knowing it would bear fruit sooner or later. And they ripened. 3 years ago, I bought a house. Not just a dwelling, but a space in a good neighborhood, with panoramic windows overlooking the lake, where the water turned golden at sunset. It was mine. Every brick, every nail was paid for by my labor, and I was damn proud of it. In a fit of naive, belated hope for reconciliation, I gave my parents a spare key. For emergencies, I said, and to water the orchids. My orchids were my passion, a fragile and beautiful world I nurtured. It was Mom, to my surprise, who offered to care for them. It seemed like a gesture, a bridge across the chasm of years of neglect. It was stupid. Exactly 6 months ago, returning from a conference in Japan with gifts for everyone, I crossed the threshold and froze. The air was thick and sour with the smell of alcohol. Empty beer bottles stood on my bookshelves like ugly trophies. A dark, sticky stain gaped on the expensive rug. And in the corner, toppled and lifeless, lay one of my orchids, its fragile stem broken, petals crumpled. A party for Jake had been held in the house. Mom had organized it. Without asking, without warning, she simply considered it possible. Something snapped in me then. The voice on the phone wasn't mine, hoarse, trembling, with rage and pain. Mom responded with cold bewilderment, as if I were making a scene over a trifle, as if my personal space was a public square. In the end, I forgave them, because they're family. Because that's how it's supposed to be. But I also installed a video surveillance system. Quietly, secretly. Neither my parents nor Jake, no one knew. I just wanted to know if it would happen again. Was it an accident or a rule? And then, last Tuesday, I was sitting at my desk, immersed in the monotonous flow of code where logic and order reigned. Suddenly, my phone buzzed briefly and businesslike. A notification. The motion sensors on the cameras had triggered. Probably a delivery flashed through my mind, but my fingers were already reaching for the app icon to lift the veil on another little secret. My phone screen became a window into an alternate reality where my life was not my own. What I saw froze my blood, turning it into icy slush slowly creeping through my veins. There, in my sanctuary, among the walls I had labored for, my parents were bustling about. My father, with the focused look of a cartographer exploring new territory, was measuring the walls of my living room with a tape measure. My mother stood beside him, her fingers fluttering across her smartphone screen, entering sacrilegious notes into digital tablets. And in the center of this picture, lounging on my sofa with an unconcealed sense of ownership, sat Jake. I turned up the volume, and their voices, clear and confident, filled the silence of my study. 14 feet, my father stated crisply, consulting the steel tape of the measure. Excellent. Mother typed something quickly. There's enough space for a large-screen TV and your game console, she stated without a shadow of a doubt. Perfect spot, Jake drawled lazily from the sofa. A real upgrade from my current dump. Can't believe Grace managed to get herself a place like this all alone. My father's chuckle sounded like a whip crack. Well, not for long. Mother walked over to the panoramic window, beyond which lay the lake, bought at the price of my sleepless nights. We'll move your things when she leaves for Denver next month. Once everything is settled, she won't make a scene. She'll just accept it. You sure? A false note of worry sounded in Jake's voice. After that party, she was furious. Mother brushed off his words with such disdain, as if flicking dust off expensive furniture. She always cools down. She's not the type to start family dramas. She'll grumble for a day or two, and then calm down. Father nodded, his gesture full of paternal, perverted confidence. Mom's right, and besides, when all your stuff is already here, what will she do? Throw her own brother out on the street? She doesn't have that kind of cruelty in her. Jake's grin, wide and self-satisfied, was the final straw. I knew you'd sort it out. It's gonna be awesome. I sat, staring at the flickering screen, and a fine tremor of rage ran through my hands. They weren't just violating my boundaries. They were planning a full-scale invasion, cold-blooded and calculated. They wanted to give my house, my fortress, to Jake, just like they used to give him toy cars and soccer balls. And they were doing it behind my back, in secret, while I was away, depriving me of even a ghost of a chance to resist. And the most terrible thing? They were sure of my obedience, of my unchanging meekness. All those years of invisibility flashed before my mind's eye. Every concession, every bit of attention taken away, every gift for him bought with my savings. They invested all their resources in him, while I struggled just to survive. And now they wanted to take the last thing, my house, my proof of worth and independence. I exited the app and leaned back in my chair. My palms were damp and cold, but inside, a strange crystalline clarity had settled. I wouldn't let this happen. I wouldn't cave. My era of invisibility had come to an end. I opened the messenger and typed a message to Jake. Hey, want to come over for dinner on Saturday? Haven't seen you in a while. Maybe we can all get together. You, me, Mom and Dad? He replied almost instantly. Sure, sounds great. I put the phone down and got back to work. I had 4 days to prepare not a dinner, but an operation of retribution. I spent them gathering all the documents, all the evidence, all the financial traces of our family life. I sifted through mountains of bank statements, piles of letters, years of correspondence. I created spreadsheets where every number screamed of injustice. I printed everything out and sorted it into folders, like a lawyer preparing for the most important case of her life. And I found it. Irrefutable proof, numbers, cold and soulless. Over the past 6 years, I had lent Jake $73,000. He hadn't paid back a single cent. Every printout, every line in the bank statement wasn't just a number. It was a monument to my blindness. He came to me with eyes full of artificial panic, with stories about urgent medical bills or shiny, tinsel-like business ideas that were sure to hit the jackpot this time. And I gave. I gave because he was my brother. And somewhere deep down, a hope flickered that one day he would see me not as a wallet, but as a sister. He solemnly promised to return every cent. And he never did. The next file revealed another abyss. 5 of Jake's failed business projects. Each of them had been generously, without a shadow of a doubt, financed by our parents. They poured money into his fleeting passions like into a bottomless barrel, and all they got in return was his очередная disappointment and new requests. And then I remembered. 3 months ago, a Facebook message from a stranger named Madison. She introduced herself as Jake's girlfriend and begged to talk about something important. I found that forgotten chat. Her words were full of desperation and anger. Jake, exploiting her trust, had taken out credit cards in her name and withdrawn $40,000 from them to finance his new grand project, a cryptocurrency course where he taught others how to get rich after squandering someone else's savings. Madison attached everything: receipts, statements, irrefutable proof of his fraud. And then, rereading her messages, I noticed a detail that had escaped me the first time. Jake had registered an LLC for that very course, and he used not his address, but mine, my home address, without my knowledge, without my permission. He wasn't just taking money. He was setting me up, turning my house, my refuge, into the legal address of his shady enterprise. I leaned back in my chair, seized by a chilling calm. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about years of systematic use, total disregard for my boundaries, the perception of me as a resource that should always remain silent and forgive. I wrote to Madison, told her everything I had learned and about my family's insidious plan. Her rage was a mirror of my own, and she readily agreed to help. We made a plan. Saturday dinner promised to be truly unforgettable. Saturday evening arrived. I was ready. The table was set with impeccable precision, as if I were preparing for the most ordinary family dinner. The air was filled with the aroma of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. It was the food of my childhood, which Mom used to cook in those rare times when I still felt her care. My parents arrived first. Father hugged me with demonstrative warmth, glancing around. "The house looks wonderful, sweetie." Mom kissed me on the cheek, her eyes skimming over the table setting. "How beautifully you've set everything up." They felt so at ease, so confident in their victory. They had no idea they were walking to the slaughter. Jake, true to his style, was 15 minutes late. He entered in expensive sneakers and a designer jacket, which, I knew, were bought with someone else's money. We sat down at the table, and for the first 20 minutes, a deceptive idyll reigned. We talked about work, the weather, nothing substantial. Mom praised the chicken. Father asked about my startup with undisguised greed. Jake was silent, absorbed in his food. Then Mom put down her fork. An expression I knew all too well appeared on her face, sweetly condescending, foreshadowing a request that couldn't be refused. "Grace, dear, we wanted to talk to you about something." Father cleared his throat, adopting an official demeanor. "It's about Jake. His lease is up and the landlord is raising the rent sky high. We thought, you have so much space here and you're always traveling. It would be logical if Jake lived here for a while." "Of course temporarily," Mom added hastily, smiling, "until he gets properly on his feet." Jake looked at me with such an expectant expression, as if my agreement was predetermined by the very nature of things. He was already mentally arranging his things in my closets. I took a slow sip of water, setting the glass down with a quiet click. Get on his feet? After what exactly? My voice sounded almost dispassionate. Father frowned, his eyebrows drawing together in a familiar, stern fold. "Well, you know, he's going through a tough time right now." "Jake is always going through a tough time," I retorted. "When was it ever simple?" Mom's smile froze, becoming strained and fragile. "Grace, don't be like that. We're family, and family helps each other in difficult times." "Absolutely right," I agreed. And in the silence of the hall, my voice rang out with crystalline clarity. "Family should help. That's very interesting, because I've been helping Jake for many years. Let me ask you, Jake, do you remember how much money you've borrowed from me over the past 6 years? Jake shifted in his chair, his confidence beginning to melt. I don't know, a few thousand, I guess? $73,000. I stated the figure, cold and indisputable, like a granite slab. And you haven't paid back a single cent. Father put down his knife and fork with force. Grace, where are you going with this? I'm leading to the question, do you still consider me an idiot? I said calmly, taking out my phone and placing it on the tablecloth. I'm leading to the fact that 4 days ago, you came to my house without my knowledge and planned to move Jake in here while I was in Denver. I pressed play, and their own voices, recorded by the hidden camera, filled the dining room, becoming the loudest accusation. Father's voice measuring the walls, Mother's voice typing messages, Jake's self-satisfied voice discussing how wonderfully he would settle into my space. Their cynical plan played out against the clinking of crystal. When the recording ended, a tomb-like silence fell, thick and oppressive. Mother opened her mouth to find an excuse, but at that moment, the doorbell rang. "Excuse me," I said, rising. Our last guest must have arrived. I opened the door, and Madison stepped into the hallway. Petite, with dark hair and eyes burning with determination, she looked nervous but unwavering. "Madison," I introduced her loudly enough to be heard at the table. "Thank you for coming. This is Madison." Jake's ex-girlfriend, I added for clarity. Jake's face turned as white as chalk. "What the hell is she doing here?" he hissed. "She's here because she has something to say," I replied. "Madison?" Madison walked into the dining room, her gaze fixed on Jake. Her hands were trembling slightly, but her voice was firm and clear. "You used my credit cards," she stated. "You said it was for our future, for a business that would enrich us both. You took $40,000 for your fraudulent cryptocurrency course, and then you spent it on clubs, poker, and renting expensive cars." Mother tried to intervene, her face showing fright and disbelief. "Madison, I'm sure there's just a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Madison's voice rang with steel. "I have all the receipts, all the statements. He destroyed my credit history." Then I took out a hefty folder from the sideboard. And that's not all. Jake registered his LLC using my home address without my permission. He used my property for his fraudulent business. "It's not fraud," Jake shouted, jumping up. His voice cracked with rage. "Those courses are completely legal." "Really?" I smirked coldly. "The Federal Trade Commission disagrees with you. There's currently an investigation into your entrepreneurial activities, and 3 of your students have already sued you." Father stood up, his face crimson. "This is ridiculous. You're making all this up." "Making it up," I said, without a trace of emotion, laying new documents on the table. Sheets with official stamps lay before them like a verdict. "Here are the subpoenas. Here are copies of the complaints, and here is irrefutable evidence that Jake was selling fake educational programs using stolen materials. He charged people $2,000 each and gave them absolutely nothing in return." Jake recoiled from the table as if from a physical blow. His face was contorted in a grimace of anger and fear. "You're just crazy," he exhaled, and familiar sparks of feigned righteousness flashed in his eyes. "You've always been jealous of me, since childhood." "Jealous?" My laugh sounded sharp and abrupt, even to my own ears. "Of what exactly, Jake? Your endless failures? The mountains of debt you drag behind you? Or how Mom and Dad are methodically draining their retirement savings, bailing you out again and again from the pits you dig yourself?" I turned to my parents, and my gaze, heavy with years of pain, moved from one frightened face to the other. "I have documentation on 5 of your business projects that they sponsored. All 5 failed. And now you want me to give you my house so it can become another testing ground for your adventures?" My mother's eyes filled with tears, but this time they didn't soften the stone in my chest. "How can you be so cruel?" she whispered. "I am your daughter," I replied, and every word was minted from ice. "But you haven't treated me like a daughter since I was 8 years old." My father rose, his chair scraping back loudly. "You'll regret this, Grace." His voice trembled with impotent rage. "When you're left alone, completely alone, don't come crying to us." "I won't," I replied without a shadow of doubt. "I've been alone for a long time." They left, and the door slammed shut with such a bang that the crystal glasses in the sideboard rattled. An overwhelming, ringing silence settled in the house, as if after a storm. Madison, still pale, slowly sank into a chair. Her hands were trembling finely. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing me and for the support." "Thank you for having the courage to come," I replied. "Will you sue him?" "Yes," she nodded, and determination lit up in her eyes. "My lawyer is confident we have a very strong case." "Good. He deserves it." The next day, I picked up the phone and blocked all their numbers, one by one. Mom, Dad, Jake. Each click was like the dull thud of a nail in a coffin. I was done with it, once and for all. A week passed. I was sitting at my desk, immersed in lines of code, when a message from a colleague popped up on the screen. "Hey, isn't this your brother by any chance?" My heart skipped a beat for a moment, then beat impassively again. I clicked the link. Jake's face appeared on the screen of a local news portal, distorted by malice and fear. The headline read, "Austin resident arrested on federal charges in cryptocurrency course fraud." The article detailed how federal agents had searched his apartment and found a mountain of evidence. Fake reviews he wrote himself, stolen educational materials copied from real experts, and lists of students, about 40 people, each of whom had paid $2,000 for a worthless course. All of them were now plaintiffs. Jake was arrested. His photo with a wild look and disheveled hair was all over the news feeds. I waited for some pity to awaken in me, sadness at the realization that my brother was going to prison. But inside, there was only emptiness, vast and indifferent, like space. 2 days later, a call came. The screen showed the name, Uncle Robert, my father's brother, the only person in the family who had always kept his sanity and treated me with kindness. "Grace," he began when I answered, "I heard about what happened at the dinner." "Let me guess," I smirked bitterly. "Father sent you to talk sense into me?" "He tried," Uncle Robert said calmly, "but I'm calling to tell you I'm on your side. For years I've been telling your parents they were being unfair to you. I warned them their favoritism would have consequences. They didn't listen." I felt my throat tighten, and for the first time in a long time, treacherous tears welled up in my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means a lot to me. If you or Madison need any legal help with anything related to this case, I'll make sure you have the best representation." "I appreciate that." "Your parents made their choice, Grace," he said softly but firmly. "Now they have to live with it. Take care of yourself." I hung up and sat for a long time in the silence of my study. The emptiness inside still hadn't gone away, but now, like a lone star in the night, a tiny point of warmth glimmered within it. It was bitter and strangely comforting to know that at least one person in my family had seen the truth. Madison's civil suit was progressing with punishing speed. She had all the evidence, statements, receipts, correspondence, and Jake, in pretrial detention, couldn't challenge anything. In the end, my parents had to settle and pay Madison the $40,000 to avoid an even bigger public scandal. They bought silence, just like they used to buy him cars and adventurous projects. On top of that, they had to mortgage their house to post bail for Jake, $70,000, just to get him out of the cell for a short while awaiting trial. Uncle Robert, my only source of information, reported that they were methodically burning through all their savings, retirement funds, everything they had saved for years, all for him. I didn't feel a single ounce of regret. They made their choice. I made mine. 6 months flew by in focused work. My startup, As If Boyd, attracted new investors, and the value of my share reached unprecedented heights. Life was taking on the clear contours I had built. And at that moment, a letter came from my father. Sent from his work address, it was long, verbose, and full of poison. He wrote that I had destroyed the family. He called me heartless and cruel. He claimed that the 3 to 5 years in federal prison facing Jake were my fault. He demanded that I help them, pay for an expensive lawyer, and fix the chaos that, in his opinion, I had caused. I reread the letter twice, trying to comprehend this perverted logic. He truly believed that the root of evil was in me, that the problem was my unwillingness to silently sacrifice myself. I deleted the letter and blocked his work address, just as I had blocked all the others. The next day, the mailman brought an envelope addressed by hand. The uneven, ragged handwriting gave away the author even before I opened it. Jake. His letter was an outpouring of pure, uncontrolled malice. He wrote that he knew my daily routine, knew where I worked, which stores I shopped at, which gym I went to. "You're not untouchable," he scrawled. "You'll pay for what you did to me." It wasn't just a complaint. It was a direct, unambiguous threat. I didn't hesitate. Both letters, from my father and Jake, were immediately sent to Sarah, the lawyer Uncle Robert had recommended. She studied them with cold, professional composure. "This is enough for a restraining order," she concluded, "especially given his criminal case and bail status. The court will take this seriously." The paperwork was filed that same day. The judge issued a permanent restraining order. From now on, Jake was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me. Any violation would mean immediate return behind bars. I breathed out, naively thinking that was the end of it. Mistake. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my office when I got a call from security. The guard reported in an excited voice that a man was downstairs in the lobby demanding to see me and refusing to leave. An icy stripe ran down my spine. I went down. He stood in the middle of the sterilely clean lobby space like a stain on immaculate fabric. Jake. He looked terrible. Clothes wrinkled, hair disheveled, and wild, uncontrolled fires dancing in his eyes. "You think you can just ignore me?" His shout tore through the silence of the hall, making several employees flinch. "You think you're better than me?" The security guard stepped towards him, but he didn't relent. "It's all your fault. You ruined my life. You'll pay for this." "Sir, you need to leave the building," one of the guards said sternly. "I'm not going anywhere until she listens to me," Jake screamed, his finger pointed at me like a spear. At that moment, the guard pulled out his phone to call the police. Seeing this movement, Jake roared and lunged at me across the lobby. It lasted only a second. 2 guards grabbed his arms before he could take a couple of steps, twisted them, and pinned him to the polished floor. His screams mixed with heavy breathing and the guards' sharp commands. The police arrived within minutes, and the lobby of my office briefly turned into a scene from a crime drama. Jake was arrested right there in front of my colleagues and bewildered visitors. It was a humiliating spectacle, but the humiliation concerned only him, not me. It was a natural consequence of his choices. Since he had violated the restraining order, his bail was immediately revoked. Now he would await trial in a cell with no chance of temporary freedom. The doors slammed shut behind him much more securely than ever before. At the subsequent trial, Jake had no room for maneuver. The evidence was irrefutable, and he pleaded guilty to all counts of fraud. The sentence sounded like a cold, impersonal verdict of the system: 18 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. The court also ruled that he must repay every dollar stolen from his students. My parents, to save him from further turmoil, turned their pockets inside out. They sold their suburban house, the quiet haven they had saved for retirement, and went into debt again, refinancing the primary one. All their retirement savings, all the financial security built over the years, evaporated, swallowed by the abyss of his debts and legal costs. Uncle Robert, whose voice remained my only window into their reality, sadly reported that they had aged 10 years in a few months. "Your mom," he said, "always has red, tearful eyes now, and your father, he's almost stopped talking." 15 months later, Jake was released, having served most of his sentence and received parole for good behavior. I found out not from a call or a letter, but when he materialized in my office. Returning from a meeting, I was stopped by the secretary, whose face showed embarrassment and concern. "A man is here to see you," she said quietly. "Claims he's your brother. He's been waiting for about an hour." My stomach tightened into a hard, cold knot. "Did you call security?" "He said he just wants to talk. Promised to leave if you didn't want to see him." I glanced across the lobby. and he was there. Jake was sitting in a chair by the large window, and the time spent behind bars had changed him beyond recognition. He had lost weight, his posture spoke of weariness, and cheap, nondescript clothes and deep shadows under his eyes completed the portrait of a man who had hit rock bottom. Seeing me, he stood up abruptly. "Grace," he said, and his voice lacked its former aggression, only something like a charred hope. "Please, give me 5 minutes." I should have called security immediately, should have turned around and left, but some stupid, long-buried part of my soul, the one that still remembered the 8-year-old boy, wanted to hear. 5 minutes, I agreed coldly. Here, in the lobby. And then you leave. He nodded quickly. Thank you. I want to apologize. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, Madison, many people. I thought about it every day, all these months. I want to make things right. Make things right? I repeated, and the word hung in the air, heavy and weightless at the same time. How exactly? I don't know yet, he admitted, and something like confusion flickered in his eyes. But I'm trying. I'm working. Just in a warehouse, but it's honest work. I'm repaying debts. I want to prove to you that I've changed. I looked at him for a long time, trying to find falsehood in his features, the familiar grimace of a lie. But he looked sincere, genuinely. Having been burned too many times, I had learned not to trust appearances. You're not sorry for what you did, I said quietly but clearly. You're sorry you got caught. That's the whole difference. That's not fair, familiar notes of resentment sounded in his voice again. I paid for my mistakes. I was in prison. I lost everything. You lost everything because of your own choices, I parried, remaining unshaken. Not because of me. I didn't force you to cheat people. I didn't force you to use Madison's credit cards. I didn't force you to threaten me. You did that yourself. His face began to flush a deep crimson, and the old poisonous fire flared in his eyes. You're my sister, he shouted, and his voice broke. You were supposed to help me. You were supposed to cover for me. And this was called covering? For years, I pretended not to notice the missing money, justified your behavior to myself, believed in your tales of reform, even though deep down I knew it was hopeless. And what did I get in return? You secretly planned to steal my house, the only thing that truly belonged to me. I wasn't stealing it. His voice rose to a shout, echoing through the sterile lobby space. Mom and Dad just decided it would be better. You're almost never home anyway. It was my house, I stated, and every word fell like a stone. Mine, not yours, and it's not for you to decide what to do with my property. He took a sharp step forward, instinctively making me step back. You always thought you were better than me, he shouted, and the familiar demons of envy danced in his eyes. Always so perfect, so successful. You could have helped me, but you chose to ruin my life. I ruined your life? I almost laughed, but the laugh got stuck in my throat as a lump of bitter irony. Jake, you ruined your life yourself. You committed the fraud. You threatened me. You violated the restraining order. I just didn't let you drag me down with you. You're selfish, he hissed. An arrogant bitch. You're my older sister. You were supposed to take care of me. No, my answer sounded, cold and final, like a verdict. That was Mom and Dad's job, and they failed at it. They turned you into a person who thinks the whole world owes him something, into someone who only takes, giving nothing in return. One day you'll need family, his voice trembled, but not from grief, from impotent malice. And when that happens, we won't be there. Good, I simply said, because I don't need a family like you. I don't need people who notice me only when they need something from me. I don't need thieves, liars, and those who sow threats. He stared at me, his face contorted with rage, turning crimson. You'll regret this. I've already told you, I reminded him, feeling a strange, icy calm. You're on probation. You're prohibited from approaching me. If you don't leave right now, I'll call your probation officer and report you for harassment. He opened his mouth to pour out a new portion of anger, but the words got stuck in his throat. He froze, his gaze full of hatred and despair piercing me for a moment. Then, turning sharply, he strode quickly towards the exit. I watched as his figure dissolved into the stream of people on the street. I felt absolutely nothing. No sadness, no regret, only a vast, all-consuming emptiness in which peace had finally settled. I returned to my office and immersed myself in work as if nothing had happened. 2 years have passed since then. 2 years of complete, absolute silence. No news from Jake or from my parents. I don't know and don't want to know what happened to them. My life is truly beautiful now. I live with Ethan, my boyfriend, in a bright apartment in the city center. He's a graphic designer, a man of incredible kindness and generosity of spirit. Everything I was deprived of in my own family. We've been together for 1.5 years, and this time has been a revelation for me. I've never been so happy and calm. My startup is thriving. The value of my shares is such that I could stop working. But I continue because I love what I do, and now it's my conscious choice, not a necessity. I have loyal friends, real ones, those who support me not out of duty, but from the heart. I built this life myself, surrounding myself with people who value and respect me. As for my former family, I have completely excised them from my existence, and I don't regret it. They had decades to treat me like a human being, but they chose a different path. I owe them nothing. Sometimes people tell me I should forgive, because family is family. But people who throw such words around don't understand. They don't know what it's like to be an invisible person in your own home. They don't know what it's like to fight for every scrap while watching another be handed everything on a silver platter. I don't need such a family. Now I've created my own, from people I truly care about and who care about me. And I am finally fine.